Welcome to the Futures Forum Live online, where we explore the landscape and byways of our shared futures. On this edition of the Futures Forum Live, we exchange ideas, information, education, and inspiration about the future of Black America. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Get Futures Sense now. Share this story and share our future. Stay tuned for a journey to the future with host Dr. Claire Nelson.
So now we're on to part two of our conversation, and because I couldn't manage to do this interview in half an hour, I want to go now to this idea of we have this society then with automation and AI, and you're saying it's not, we need to actually relanguage it and say it's not just an automated society, it's becoming an inhumane society.
Correct.
Right, so that might be one way to do it. So now let's look at the future we want. So we want a future that is going to be more humane, and also a future that has more well-being for all living things, all living beings. You spoke earlier about the gross happiness, and certainly gross happiness is one measure of well-being. But what are some ways that you think, maybe you have an experiment in Portland that's happening, but what are some ways in which we, the Black community who are involved in advocacy and policy making, can try to, first of all, begin to understand more how those metrics work, because meaningful metrics are very critical to creating a smart future. And two, no, let's start there, and then I go on to two.
Okay. So the question, so this comes down to political power and political will. The question is, who can start a gross happiness index? The answer is you. You know, you and me, you, me, and my neighbors. Okay, and a small group of people can take on the task and have it spread. Okay. I think that, you know, this is like political power from the bottom up. This is the work that I've been doing literally around the world, in places like Argentina and in Sri Lanka and Thailand and other places. The political will to change is there.
So how can I take it to Baltimore? I live in Maryland. How can I take it to Minneapolis? How can I take it to DC?
Yeah, so first thing you do, the first thing that is done, okay, is someone has the will to say, I want to see this gross happiness index in Baltimore. And then you get together with, 5 or 10 of your friends and say, this is a great idea, why don't we start doing it? And then somebody says, what does it look like? I don't know what it looks like. Let's look on the internet. Let's start doing the research around it. And then you get 20 people and say, okay, how has the happiness of Baltimore gone up or down over the last week? Okay, start the process yourself. We have been trained to think that somebody else is responsible.
No, I'm asking this question because I really want to know, because if I was to say, go to my 2 colleagues who are on the State House and say, hey, put a bill forward for this because XYZ and well-being, I'm going to measure well-being by measuring a gross happiness index, and we want to get some support to even do a mini pilot in one little area. I mean, everybody has a smartphone now, right?
Yes, indeed.
It could be a system that's in every giant supermarket or Safeway supermarket. When you go and you punch a button and it rings up the bell somewhere else, it's like a smart meter, right? So my question is, how do we get this from 1 to 10 people then? Is it that Commonway Institute has one of its visions for 2030 and beyond, because since that's what is going to sell right now, right? To come back to what we actually sell. Since the 2030 is the pull year, and the America's SDGs is talking about the 7 goals and blah, blah. Can Commonwealth Institute throw itself into the pond and say, okay, we're going to take on this piece and lead the, community of people who are not either left or right, but they do have something to say, maybe I fit in that group, right? That would want to see something different, like a gross happiness index or gross well-being index or some kind of index other than a GDP and a GNP, which is not working for us.
Yeah. So two things. One is a short story, and the other is what Commonway is doing, and what the next steps, what my next steps are. Okay. The short story is, I don't know if you've been to Singapore, but you know, when you go,
I want to go. Take
okay. Yeah. So when you go to the airport, then you go through the line for passport control and customs. So you go through passport control, and the people are so nice. And if you've ever been out of the country, you know passport control people are not nice. Okay, they're you know they're like, how dare you come into my country? You know. So these people are really, and when I first time, the woman asked for my passport, and I gave it to her. And then she says, "Candy," and I'm like, "Candy? I don't have any candy." She said, "No." She had this big bowl of candy on her station. "Would you like some candy?" And I'm like, "Is this a test? If I take the test, I don't get to come in your country." So you clear past. She says, "Thank you. Have a really nice day in Singapore." She's very pleasant. And you turn, and there's this really big button that says, "How was your agent?" Okay, and you can score. The red button is a 1, and the green button is a 5, and she got a 5. Okay, now that is immediate feedback for her, so that she knows whether she's doing a good job or not. And more importantly, her supervisor knows whether she's doing a good job or not. And so we can, with all of these magic devices of ours, we can create a situation where we have immediate feedback on everything. And the stores that get by with having fewer and fewer employees, you can't just have a simple question. You can't find an employee, okay? You start rating them lower and lower immediately, and watch the change, okay? But the thing that, so these are just ideas that I've been throwing out. I want to tell you what, I want to take a breath, because I'm getting really excited by the conversation here.
I'm excited by the conversation right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking calm. I'm actually jumping up and down.
Yes, right. So I want to share with you what Commonway is launching within the next month. This is something, and I don't know if you're familiar with the World Cafe. This is a conversational, a dialogue process started by Juanita Brown to bring people together.
Yes.
Juanita and I cooked up an offshoot of that that we call the Commons Cafe. And the Commons Cafe brought people together, but they were either actual or potential adversaries. So these are people who didn't like each other, okay, or didn't know each other, and we brought them into dialogue with each other. This was a very successful program we were doing back in the 90s. We're going to dust this off for the 21st century, and we're calling these the Imaginal Cafes. And if you're familiar with the process by which a caterpillar becomes the butterfly, it's the butterfly just sitting there and eating your entire garden, okay? And if it continued to do that, it would eat the entire world. But at a given point, it stops. It forms the chrysalis. It dissolves, and inside inside this packet of ooze, these imaginal cells start spinning out the various parts of the butterfly. So the head comes from this part, and the wings come from that part, and the feet come from that part. And what I'm seeing us doing is creating these imaginal gatherings, these imaginal cafes, where on a given night, a group of people who the only thing they have in common is that they're interested in the future, okay? And we will have a series of scripts of discussion points, questions, etc. And regular human beings will get a chance to connect with each other and to connect around fundamental issues, and get a chance to really find out what each other is saying, other than the news blips, the media blips that are coming, that come through. So when I was doing the Commons Cafe, the media would say, "Can we come in?" And the answer is yes, but only as a citizen. You're not there to report anything. You're not there to ask any questions. I don't want anybody writing any statements down. All you are is a citizen of this town, and you get to participate, and you get to give your own impressions, not this side said this and that side said that. What we found in these conversations, what I'm hoping we're going to find in the Imaginal Cafe, is people, regular people, being amazingly profound and starting to impact their own communities, starting to impact their communities in ways that they had not thought of before.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the people I thought I was against, I'm now working with them. Okay. We all of us want the same thing. You know,
Okay.
I was doing one cafe between Anglos and Latinos in a town that's south of Portland, a rural area, and which is really interesting because I'm neither Anglo nor Latino, and they were struggling with each other, not talking to each other. They were in the same stores, pushing their shopping carts, and would not make eye contact, would not say anything to each other. I gave them the context to talk to each other, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we all want the same thing. We want the same thing for our children. We want the same thing for our community. And they were able to pull together to isolate the negative parts of their community. The Anglos had negative parts of their community. The Latinos had negative parts of their community, and they were attributing all of that to each other. And so they were able to create a whole new way of looking at community. Now, that doesn't sell a whole lot of newspapers, you know.
Not conflict sells.
Yes, and so, but that is a place where if you were measuring the gross happiness index, the gross happiness would have gone up, okay?
Yes.
And so these imaginal cafes, the next step in that is to create a permanent cafe. And then is to create a cafe that actually is employing people, okay? That's actually generating revenue. And that revenue, okay, so the revenue of Starbucks goes to the CEO of Starbucks. So the CEO's salary, his straight salary, not including bonuses, etc., is $24 million a year, okay? Now, I keep thinking, okay, if you spent the $24 million of last year, what do you have to buy? What are you spending on this year, okay? So what happens when you have people who are dedicated to not getting $24 million a year, but dedicated to taking that money and putting back into their community and making more, and then taking that money and putting back in their community and making more? Well, eventually they get to a place where this is our step 3, where you can actually create a village. You can create a village of people who are thinking well of themselves. Creating a village of people.
But that's such a long process. You mean there's no way to short circuit it by saying, by fiat, the Maryland House of Delegates says we will now begin to measure something called a gross happiness index, and this is what we're going to be doing, how we'll do it, or well-being index?
Yes, you can do that. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, you can do that. Period at the end of that sentence, okay? I would be willing to help you do that. Period at the end of that sentence. When you ask me what Commonway is doing, I am committed to doing these imaginal cafes.
Right.
Okay.
So
and starting that process.
I do see that I do think that the imaginal cafes, especially now, right? Mm-hmm. If that idea were to take off, right? Mm-hmm. Especially now, because we have like an 18-month or 12 and I call it a 19-month window to have a conversation about what America's future in the next decade is going to look like, right? Mm-hmm. So I do think that's a very critical first step. Hopefully, right, mm-hmm. we have enough people that can spread that idea very fast. Well, luckily we have internet, so yes, there won't be any, let's say, regular media, but maybe there's other, let's say, personal media that you use to say, okay, we don't need to have official media verify and approve. We're not looking for that. What we're looking for is individuals that are like us. We're looking for our tribe, our clan, wherever they are in America, to say, you know, here is the six-point thing. You go out and do your own guideline, go your own imaginary cafe. In the same way, the Occupy movement happened and other movements happened. What has happened, people have asked recently, is what happened to the Occupy movement? Where did they disappear to? Is it that they have now become the pink hat movement or the white suit movement or the gun control movement? So like, if we imagine this cafe process, then I try to say, not as something that's going to be fixed forever, but maybe, as you say, a 2-year gestation period for the birthing of the next form of the thing. Maybe it will be butterfly yet, it will be something else. But so it's on the way to becoming the butterfly. Perhaps this, like, emergent string theory version of imaginary cafe, right, could actually be something that Black community activists who are looking for a third way could take forward. Because there are many people, I would count myself as one of them, who are neither extreme left or extreme right.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I have a very different things I want to see. I mean, some of my attitudes are very right, and some of my attitudes are very left, and that's the problem. I don't fit anywhere. So, but an imaginary cafe that could lead to something I believe in, like wellness, a well-being index in Maryland, or gross happiness index in this region of America, in Northeast Corridor, is something that I would probably join that if it were to exist. And so therefore, at least knowing that a Commonway Institute exists and is at least saying it, people like myself who are like, I'm not going to say anything as strange. I'm already considered a strange person. I don't want to be the first person on this one. Can have, quote unquote, cover, if you will, to lob onto. So how does Commonway Institute try, or does it try at all, to bring your message to, let's say, the standard Black influencer? Not influence as in the flu, but in influencerati.
Okay, right. So let me go back to what you first back to what you said about Occupy.
Yeah.
The Occupy phenomena was not a success because they didn't think it through. There's something my mother used to say back when cars had carburetors. They would be misadjusted, and dogs would chase the cars up and down the street because they're hearing something that we're not hearing. And my mom would look at this dog chasing a car and saying, "What's it going to do if it catches it?" You know, they can't drive. And so Occupy was like the dog that caught the car and didn't know what to do, and had a close to fantasy notion of how the world works. So I don't know about on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, a lot of the occupations wound up in big trouble because crime element came into the occupation. There were people stealing, there was fights, there was lots of stuff because they hadn't planned for it. One of the things that I do, and I've been spending months thinking out, what does step 1 look like? What does step 2 look like? What does step 3 look like? Now, when I launch this thing, it may look like something else, but at least these questions have been thought about, okay? If you really care about the future. Okay, so let me say something else about, let me say that you were talking about, I don't fit in the right, I don't fit in the left. I think that those dichotomies are largely irrelevant nowadays. I think I think government should be a lot smaller. I think that people should be responsible. I think that for themselves. And I also think that we need to deal with the vestiges of institutional racism and institutional oppression. Okay, so all these things are jumping around.
Yes.
I think that the way to approach this is not from the right and not from the left, but to come together above all that and to say, there's a whole other way that we're going to be looking at ourselves and looking at each other in the near future. Something that we did some years ago, this is right when the Tea Party was first coming out. There was a number of organizations that got together, a number of us who were off of the spectrum of right and left. One of them was the Transpartisan Alliance, and then some other folks. And I was invited to this, where we invited the head of the Tea Party, the head of Move On, and the head of the Libertarians to sit down and have a conversation. No cameras, no recording devices. All we're going to do is talk about, are there any places that we can connect? Are there any places where there is something that we can hold in common? Lots of places. In fact, if I got people in the room and started asking them the right questions, most of us will come together and agree. If I get 100 average people in the room and say, everybody in favor of gay marriage on this side, everybody opposed to gay marriage on that side, I will split the room immediately and they'll start fighting. If I say, all of you who are in favor of giving clean water to your children, stand on this side. Everybody who wants to give toxic, dirty, industrial water to your children, stand on this side. We're going to have everybody on the same side of the room. So by asking the right questions, we get to think out our future. We get to, and by having the room calm, you know, I'm not going to make my headline by yelling or screaming at somebody, etc. I've got a cup of coffee and or a cup of tea, and we're just having a conversation. That we can do that. That whether you are right, left, center, or not even on the planet, you can make a commitment to turning in a weekly index for the happiness index. You can turn in what made you happier this week? What made you less miserable this week? Yeah. And just by even asking the question, I think that it will raise people's score, because no one's asking those questions. No one's saying, how connected are you to your future? Right now, our future is being driven by the technology that you were talking about. The search for AI. I don't even know that we've got that many human intelligences in this society. They do these statistics, these readings. They say like a third of Americans think that geckos can talk because they saw one talking on a commercial. You know, it's like, how do we foster real intelligence, real wisdom, as opposed to worrying about whether or not I can get this thing to talk to convince me that it's actually a human being, when it will never be a human being. I don't think it'll ever be intelligent, but that's our third hour, okay?
I think we've used this hour quite well. We have asked a lot of questions. We haven't answered any, but I'm going to ask you just two closing questions. One is very simple. Are you optimistic, based on all you have said? Are you optimistic, pessimistic, or neutralistic about the future?
I'm very optimistic about the future, and I'll be very definite about that. The alternative is for me to crawl into my bed, suck my thumb, and wait for the end. Okay. So yeah, and I'm positive about it because I'm doing something about it. I'm not waiting for anybody else to do anything about it.
Exactly. Yeah. The second question is, Commonway Institute. Give me a headline from whatever year. You tell me the year you want to use, 2030, 2040, 2015. But give me a headline that says Commonway Institute vision to so-and-so, or Commonway has succeeded in? What has happened as a result of this Imaginal Cafe movement? Tell me what it looks like. And the headline on our PDAs read or sound.
Okay, you told me this question earlier, and I made it a point not to think about it. So this is right off the top of my head. That by 2030, this is actually stretching it, there'll be more Imaginal cafes around the world than Starbucks.
Okay.
And all the money that Starbucks is making right now is going to be plowed back into the communities that money came from. Yeah, I will not be making $24 million. Okay, I'll be making a lot less. So we will be a factor to reckon with around the world by 2030.
Okay, I think
you heard it here.
That's a very good place to end this conversation for today. We have to probably come back next year and see how we're doing. But I want to thank you so much, Shariff Abdullah of Commonway Institute, for this very interesting, insightful conversation on the future history of Black America and the Imaginal cafes that will be littering our community with prosperity.
Absolutely.
So that's it, folks. We wanted to thank you for tuning in and join us on the Futures Forum Live. We just want to say this is where we come to explore salient ideas for sustainable futures. We know that the future is embodied in the landscape of today, and so we urge you to go out and seize the future, because we co-create the future today. And so it has been another exciting journey through the landscape of the future. And until next time, I say safe journey.
You have been listening to the Futures Forum Live online. This podcast aims to tell and share stories about the emerging future and help us better shape the future we want. The Futures Forum Live online is a production of the Futures Forum in Washington, D.C. For more information, visit www.thefuturesforum.org. Get future sense now. Remember, our future is embedded in the landscape of the present. Share this story and share the future.